the Astros 6-1. Astros are a very good team right now, and they did it in Houston tonight, 8-10. They want to do it again, second of 3 against the Astros, 8-10 here on MMS and on the iHeartRadio app. So 7:40 is when that pregame will get going, and then the third of 3 is tomorrow night. Of course, tomorrow afternoon we'll be treated to another Poundcake Sports Break and a brand new episode of the Poundcake Podcast. Hey, Ted.
Hello.
Ted, hey.
How you doing?
What's going on, man?
Just another wonderful day.
Another beautiful day in paradise, correct?
I agree completely.
All right. What's up?
So, dude, not a whole lot. I just actually haven't listened to your show in a little while and happened to turn it on during this whole gun conversation. And
yep.
It's like, wow. I don't know. I think the problem goes way before gun control.
Okay.
It's just more about the way the people are raising their children. Like I say, it's an old saying.
So you think
guns don't kill people kill people?
Yeah, but Ted, we don't know.
Those guns.
But Ted, we don't know how this school shooter was raised. We know his age and his name.
We don't know how he was raised, but obviously he was raised where he thought it was okay to go into a school and kill a bunch of kids.
You think that's how his parents raised him? They said, well, all right, we don't want you staying up past 11, but if you want to kill some kids at a school, have at it.
Yeah, but Ted, you know that not to be insulting, but that's an overly simplistic way to kind of decipher what's going on here. I mean, we can't fall back anymore on we don't have a gun problem. It's patently false that we don't have a gun problem. Now, the question, that's not even controversial anymore. The question is, what are the solutions? And those solutions seem to be, whatever they are, seem to be slipping away. The window to do anything is kind of closing. You can't have over the long term, Ted, you can't have an open carry democracy. You just can't. You can't have a population armed to the teeth, ready to trigger happy and whatever. The presence of a gun in a social situation will become a threat. So being armed and being trigger happy are two different things. It is, but the notion that the more heavily armed you are, the safer you are, is also patently false. So when you talk about how kids were raised, the implication there is, well, if they'd been raised a different way, they wouldn't have done this. And you might be right, but we don't. Go ahead.
Sorry. I'm not talking strictly like individual, this child, that child. I'm just talking about the way the generations are raising the younger people.
Well, aren't you the ones?
I was born in the 70s, raised in the 80s, went to high school in the 90s. I've been bullied. I've gone through all the stuff. And in today's society, the parents are stepping in to, anti-bully this, anti-bully that. I listen, I don't believe anybody should be bullied, but if you're being bullied, you need to stand up for yourself. Your parents don't need to step in and, it's okay, we'll take care of this. It's okay, we'll take care of this.
So,
we were kicked out of the house when we were kids. If we weren't at school, we were kicked out of the house when the sun came up. We came home when the streetlights came on.
Yeah, but Ted,
during the day, we had to figure that out.
Ted, first of all, if you and I are the way you describe it, you and I are probably relatively the same age. The world simply isn't like that anymore. So this whole when I was a kid, yeah, a lot of things when I was a kid, but it's not like that anymore, and we're not children anymore. And so I think we owe it to everyone involved to not try to solve these problems like children. The Columbine kids were just a little younger than us, Ted, when that whole thing went down.
And Ted, you are also the age of the parent that is
raising the kids you're talking
about. So it's your fault?
Listen, I agree, and
it's your fault.
I have 6 kids of my own, and
so Ted's gun is always going off.
Yeah, so we should bully your kids so that they're tough, and shouldn't intervene.
But Ted, my question is, what would be the way to raise your kids to assure 100% that they don't get themselves armed and shoot a school of elementary school students?
But there is no 100%.
And there's the problem.
You're never going to get the 100%.
And that's the problem.
And you're never going to get 100% of the guns off the street.
No, but the notion that because we can't do anything, or because we can't take care of everything, that we shouldn't do anything is silly too.
Listen, I agree. I do agree with that 100%.
I mean,
I don't feel like I say I'm not. I definitely am an avid gun owner.
Right.
I have multiple guns. I was raised in a house with guns, and I got my first shotgun when I was 7 years old. And I was taught how to use it.
I assume you lived in the country.
Well, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay, so in the desert.
Right, we were definitely in the desert.
Right.
Okay. Places to shoot back in the early '80s and stuff. It was mostly desert.
Ted, can I ask you a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Would you give up your gun if someone killed one of your children in a school shooting? Would you be willing to give up your guns?
No.
If it meant there was no other kids that would ever die in a school shooting again?
Listen, if
just answer yes or no.
If anybody could ever guarantee that no other child would die if I gave up my guns, I definitely would.
Okay, well, that's what they did in Australia.
But they're going to die. And if they don't have access to guns, then they're going to be online figuring out how to make little bombs, or they're going to be driving their cars to the school.
I tend to agree, actually.
But it's also...
give me the stats on other countries where there are these things happening. It's not happening in Australia. It's not happening in civilized countries.
But Bill,
they have gun control, and they don't have these
other countries aren't
murders.
Other countries are not the U.S., and this country was founded on guns. You can't get rid of them. You can't get rid of them completely.
No, it was not founded on guns. It was manipulated into being
this was a country
through the NRA.
This is a country in the modern day, but this is a country that was founded by revolution. It was very much, guns are very much in the blood of this country.
They are, and I don't feel comfortable.
And we are not like other countries in that we got 300 some odd million people. Other countries don't have that many people.
Correct.
And a lot of these other countries, there's a sense of national pride in those countries. I don't mean in like the Hitler way. I mean, you've got countries where it's basically all the same people who live there. So in Australia, they can say, do this for your countrymen and all Australians. Do this for your fellow Swede. And this. You also have other countries that have a national health service. So if it is mental health, they get it taken care of. We don't do that here. We blame mental health. We just don't do anything about it. So...
not to cut you off, but on top of that, of all these other countries you're talking about, whose justice system is the most lenient, whose justice system is way behind, that's us.
Well, these that's a whole other ball of wax. But I mean,
when they have these problems with those people are dealt with swiftly.
Well, these people are usually shot by the police when they get there, or they kill themselves, or they're in prison for life.
To his point, though, if you claim mental health issues on a problem that is just starting, people look at you, they're
it's
like,
not just starting, though.
But I'm saying, before you go shoot up a school or a grocery store or whatever, if you have a history of mental health, people don't care about it. You could go to the hospital. If you don't have the money, they'll send you home. If they don't, you can go to your parents. If they don't have the answers, they will disregard it. You could go to the school. You could go to whatever. They don't care about mental health until there's a problem, until you're hurting people. So if they care about mental health, prove that you care about mental health. Make laws, put laws in place where people who have mental health can get help, and they're not shamed about it. If that's the root of the problem, but it may not be.
Ted, to your point, kind of. Countries with really high gun ownership, that hasn't kept them from being run by tyrannical governments. Over here they're like, you're going to take my cold dead hand and the best defense against tyranny and blah, blah, blah. There are plenty of countries. Look at Iraq. They're firing guns into the sky. Everybody's got a gun. That hasn't stopped a number of countries from still being run by authoritarian, tyrannical governments. So if that's someone's rationale for why everybody should be walking around strapped, it's not historically accurate. You know, people, Second Amendment people love to talk about Hitler took all the weapons and look what happened. Well, that's a great talking point, but, you can't take one example and say that's how everything goes, North Korea, by the way, they have virtually no guns. But it's also true of South Korea, and there are very few guns in Japan. And in
China.
There isn't a one. Ted, I'm going to let you go, but I appreciate the call, okay?
All right. You have a good one.
Thank you, pal. There's Ted from Phoenix, Arizona. Steven Tyler is going back into rehab. You talk about old people getting divorced. We were talking earlier about Jimmy Carter and Rosalind Carter being married since the mid-40s, and they're like 97 years old. It wouldn't be funny if they got divorced because they just wanted to kick it for a while. Steven Tyler is a 74-year-old guy, and I realize drug addiction is a beast. But 74 and you relapse. These guys were set to do a bunch of shows in Vegas, and they had to cancel them because Steven Tyler is going back into rehab. Now, I don't know what he relapsed on. Maybe he had a drink. I don't know. But obviously, the story of Aerosmith is basically about Joe Perry. They call them the Toxic Twins because Joe Perry and Steven Tyler, are lifelong recovering addicts. And so they released a statement this morning that said that they referred to he had foot surgery to prepare for getting back on stage. He is 74, and these guys get to the point where they get new hips or whatever. And they said during the process, he relapsed.
So maybe he took
and entered a treatment program. Right, but if you're that guy, haven't there been a number of occasions where you've had to figure out, well, I can't do this because I'm an addict?
Well, you all it takes is for you to tell the doctor, hey, I'm an addict, and then they don't give you anything stronger than like Tylenol 800. But
right.
If he didn't say that and he took pain meds and it led to something bigger, or maybe he considered the pain meds himself a relapse. I don't know what his addiction was.
Well, he does live on the edge.
Famously lives on the edge. But so anyway, if you had tickets to the residency there with Aerosmith, America's Rolling Stones, then they've had to cancel some of those, at least for now, while he goes back into treatment. Hey, Mark. Hello, Mark. Mark. Okay, thank you. If you're talking, Mark, I can't hear you, but I appreciate the call. So, best of luck to Steven Tyler.
Are we done talking about the Joe call, or can I go back to it?
To the what?
About, what's his name, Joe? Who just called? Ted?
Ted. Is who called. No, go ahead.
The only part that I somewhat agree with him on, and this is hard because, I'm just experiencing parenting in whatever sense that I am for the first time. But I agree with him in the sense of kids being coddled and not knowing how to handle conflict and not being able to handle situations themselves. I think that that's 100% real. And I'm not saying it leads to school shootings or anything like that, or that.
Yeah, because you can also take a coddled kid and add a gun to it. And so then you have a kid who's been coddled and
doesn't know how to.
Has no coping mechanisms,
right.
And has grown up with, hey, a gun is the best way to solve problems.
Right.
So that's not a proper way to do it either.
But I'm not saying that the coddling is the reason for the issue. Obviously, the guns are the issue, but I agree with him in that kids, and it sounds so stereotypical to say kids have gotten soft, but like I feel like they are. Yes.
I think they're different. I think kids handle and if you're looking at those kids, it's different than, the school shooter kids are different than the ones that have, think of the kids that were in the school. Think of the kids that were in Florida, Parkland. Do you think those kids were coddled?
I'm not saying that they're...
They have different experiences.
Every generation of kids is raised differently.
There's no way to compare our experiences to theirs because it's so different.
Well,
they've grown up with the internet at their fingertips, and they actually handle online bullying better than we do. That's like everybody that's angry on Twitter, like that's old white men are on there like, oh, my kids, the way they go, oh, that's Instagram, who cares?
But also, kids or adults, this notion that an armed society is more polite
I'm not
also
saying that.
doesn't bear out. There's no evidence to support that.
Because it's just going to, it'll never end. It's just going to make people want more guns and be suspicious, and I can't trust you or anything like that. But I think that there is an issue with kids not knowing how to handle.
But that's not even just the kids. There's adults that don't know how to handle stuff.
But I feel like the
How many of our parents never actually went to therapy or did anything?
I'm not even talking about therapy. I'm specifically
but I'm
talking
saying
about bullying or talking about being
But we don't even know if
pushed
this
around.
kid...
I'm not talking about this kid. What
All
I'm
right, but
agreeing with on Joe is that I feel
Ted.
like... God, why do I keep calling him Joe?
Because you
weren't
got
bullied enough.
you got political Joe on the brain.
No, but that kids don't know how to handle difficult situations like that, and then they get super emotional, and
Some
then they
kids
reach,
don't.
and then
a
they
lot
reach
of kids
for the guns.
know. A lot of kids know how to handle, and there are a lot of kids who are bullied that don't have access to firearms.
I understand that.
So it's like,
I have 12 nieces and nephews, and when they all get together, you can see a lot of different kids who are raised differently.
Yes.
And the majority of them have a problem with conflict where they don't know how to handle it on their own. They come and they tattle, or they go do this, or they go and they cry, and we have to tell them, go figure it out. This is on you guys. Figure it out.
But is that an age thing too? Are they little, or?
I mean, they range from 3 to 10.
I mean, when
so
you're
it's all
if you're
of them.
doing that when you're 12, there's an issue. But like 3-year-olds are
I
gonna
know
go.
3-year-olds
They're
are
gonna
gonna
rat
tattle.
you out.
That I
Yeah.
understand, but I'm
They
saying
have no filter.
I understand that, but I'm saying that it's in my experience, in the little experience I have, I feel like that is also. I don't, and again, when I was a kid, I don't remember doing that.
That's why there's no like rubber stamp solutions to this stuff, because there's so many goddamn variables. But this notion that people have that we don't have a gun problem, again,
No, that's
not
ridiculous.
even controversial anymore. It's not even up for debate. What's up for debate is how people propose to contend with it. And from what I've seen, there's no will to contend with it. Alan, I won't even honk my horn if somebody cuts me off. The odds of getting shot are too great. Yeah, you don't have this,
No, I
again.
don't play like that no more either.
Right.
No, you just don't know what's going on anymore, especially since all these states now, don't need a license, don't need any training, open carry, whatever.
This is one of them. This is Ohio.
Well, that's what I'm
is
saying.
balling
Where
right
we
now.
are, yeah, right. So
Maybe
it's like,
out here wild. Mary, like
You
how
know.
you wanted to run down the street and not have any consequences.
That's different.
Literally
that's if
Ohio.
An asteroid's coming. That's not just in daily life.
No, that's just any country town in Ohio. Boom, boom.
but they can get really granular on this data, and they're like, drivers who carry guns are way more likely to make obscene gestures at other motorists, or way more likely to follow them and tailgate them, or So it doesn't make people any more polite. It's going to increase your chances of getting into a confrontation if you are, armed or whatever. So, yeah, I don't know. Alan, what is Ted talking about leniency here? We have the highest percentage of incarcerated citizens in the first world. Yeah, I didn't know what he meant by that either.
he was kinda all over
he
the
was
place.
throwing a lot of things in there, but
No, I know what he means.
He thinks the way that parents should be better is by being less involved and just being like, you're not allowed in the house till it's dark.
Not less involved. I think what he's saying is that you don't have to be so overly involved. Like, this is something that I have had a discussion with my boyfriend about, because he has always been a single dad. He hasn't had a lot of help. And that he's kind of a helicopter parent, that everything that his 6-year-old does, he's right next to her, right over her shoulder. And I'm like, dude, you've got to let her have some room. You've got to let her get in a fight. You've got to let her figure this stuff out. Otherwise, she's going to come running to you every single time something happens and not know how to do anything. Like, she's had issues being with all the cousins on my side, with all the 12 kids, because of I think being overly coddled a little bit, where you come in and it's like, I'm not blaming him or saying he's not raising his daughter right, but when it's just the two of them all the time, I understand how that happens. But
that's the difference
she'll gravitate right to him reflexively.
that's what I mean, is
But
that that's all
also,
they've ever
she
known.
hasn't been around large groups of kids, especially strangers. Of course she's going to gravitate to
But what I'm saying is, in those moments, you have to let them figure it out, and that doesn't seem to be a consensus anymore. It seems to be, my kid told me something, I'm going to immediately defend them and get mad at the other kids, or get mad at the other kids' parents, or cause conflict.
But you're also using one very small sample
Well, and
size.
that's why I said I don't have a lot of experience with
every-
this. This is based on, we talk about anecdotal evidence, based on my experience. And he's disagreed with me. The first time that she hung out with everybody, it didn't go well. And I was like, maybe she needs to be bullied a little bit. Maybe she needs to be told, hey, you can't tattle on us every 2 seconds. You know? Maybe I'm that's the redneck in me coming out.
Maybe your nieces and nephews are dicks.
Maybe they are. Maybe they're dicks. Maybe they're not accepting. There's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of different variables, but I don't think that's the part with Ted that I agreed on. That I don't think running to your parents and having your parents fix things
But
is
I think
a
I agree, but I would
think
also
that's something that's been going on with kids forever.
I would
think
also
that's a
like
new thing.
I would also like to think that over the past years, I don't know, the people are trying to raise their kids to be kind of more broadly thinking and nicer to other kids, and I don't know. Maybe there's nothing that bears that out. But again, a lot of kids get bullied and they don't shoot the school up.
I agree.
I got to take a break. If you want to get the final word in, shoot me a text 35192. The Corey Roddick Experience on the way after 6:30, and we'll be back.
It's the Alan Cox Show.